Welcome to Inspiring Mothers, where we inspire, uplift, and encourage all women. Today, I have with me a very, very special guest. Her name is Mrs. Rachel Bruno. She is going to talk to us today about a very interesting but also inspiring story that happened with her and how she overcame those trials and tribulations that were fighting against her. Rachel, thank you for joining me today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
As I said, my name is Rachel. I have been married to my husband now for 19 years. I have two boys, David and Lucas. They are now 8 years old and 7 years old. I have a master's degree in business administration, have a bachelor's degree in public speaking and PR. And, when I did all that, I thought I was going to start a career in marketing, fashion, PR. Waited a long time before I had kids because I wanted to do everything correctly.
Right, absolutely.
And after I finished my MBA, my husband and I decided to start our own business. He's a cybersecurity guy. He's a hacker, basically, but a good kind.
Not the one trying to take all the money.
And since I had the business side, I decided to do the customer relations and the acquisitions and those kinds of things. So we started, and then we had our first son. And, things were going. I had my mom help me. I had my mother-in-law come and help us at night. I have seizures. I have epilepsy. And one of the main conditions, like one of the main triggers, is sleep deprivation or interrupted sleep. So all you mamas with newborns, you ain't sleeping.
I know I haven't been getting any sleep. I'm just like sleep deprived nation.
That's right. So I had two grandmas helping me out. It was a blessing. And then, second time, I'm an only child. I always knew I wanted to have more than one. So time for second baby. And then my mom and my mother-in-law, they told me we too old for this. So they pulled their money together and told me, go get yourself a nanny, a nighttime nanny, at least so you can do the nighttime shift so you can sleep. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys are the best moms ever.
Right. I feel like every mom should have a nanny. Honestly, it's worth the investment, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So, we went out looking for a nanny and, getting the two kids running a business. Motherhood was not what I had expected. And running the business, you think it's this glamorous life, right? And that you're going to be in some executive tower.
Absolutely.
Pantsuits all day. No, you're wiping butts and sucking snot all day. In between meetings, right? And at one point, I'm like, God, is this really your grand plan? We'll go to school for 10 years, prepare everything, and, this is what I'm doing. This is our calling as mothers.
Right.
So a little, resentment there. But, we found a nanny. She was good. She had children herself. Her husband was in the Marines. She was willing to do the night shift with us. She started watching my son, my second son, Lucas, when he was 7 days old. And when he was about 7 weeks old, I woke up to him screaming at about 4 o'clock in the morning. So at this point, it'd been a couple of weeks. That was probably, I thought, feeding him or diaper change, something to that extent. Right. And he stopped crying. And then like 5 minutes go by, he starts screaming again. Then he stops. Then he starts. This went on for about 20 to 30 minutes. My husband was out of state on a business trip. My older son was 20 months old. David was sleeping directly across the hall. So I finally get up, go into the nursery, and she had the door like partially opened, had him inside the crib, had him tummy side up, had her hand on his chest, and was kind of, trying to wiggle him, shush him, seeing if he would calm down. And he was not having it. The kid was screaming. And she didn't look at me. I don't think she even noticed I was standing there. The next thing I see, she picks him up and puts him like in a burp position. And at this point, he stops screaming. But he's still, making weird faces, looked really uncomfortable. And I walk into the room and I ask her, everything okay? Anything happen? And she shows me an empty bottle. And she said, I just fed him. He's really gassy. I said, okay, fair enough. Babies get gassy. Newborn baby.
Yeah, that's normal.
Yeah. And at this point, he's screaming. I'm already awake. I don't want to wake up the 20-month-old baby. I'm home alone. So, I tell her, he's obviously not settling down. I'm already awake. Why don't you go home? I'll take it from here. So she left. I don't even remember, maybe 5 o'clock by that point, 5:30. And I took the baby. I unswaddled him, checked if there was any rashes, anything leaking from the nose, from the ears, anything we could think of when newborns are restless like this. And no signs of anything. So I undressed him completely. I gave him skin to skin, and he calmed down. He settled down. So I'm like, okay, you just wanted your mommy. So I went into my bedroom, and I must have dozed off at that point. Next thing I know, it's him screaming again. I look at my watch. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, oh, okay, hungry, right? Last feeding was 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock. And I tried to nurse him, and he was not having it. And he just screaming. He was throwing his head back, and he would not latch. And I never had any issues before. I thought it was kind of strange, but I was kind of still jaded with the gassiness. Like I said, nursing strike, colic, maybe you don't want this. That made you so bad. So I swaddle him again. And then at this point, my 20-month-old son wakes up. He's screaming there for mommy. One baby in one arm. Go grab the other baby with the other arm. Get him out of
Super mom.
And, my husband's out of state. I'm texting him. I'm like, oh my gosh, can this day get any worse?
Right.
So, walking around with a baby, anytime I put him down, he would just scream. And if I held him up, he was fine. So I'm like, you just want to be held, just be held all the time, holding him. Long story, 6 hours later, nonstop crying. He would not take a nap.
Wow.
He would not nurse. I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with this kid. Something's wrong with this kid. Dr. Google is telling me it could be all of the above.
Dr. Google? I think that's everyone's favorite. No matter if you're a woman, a man, or a kid, like we go straight to Google if something is wrong.
So I call my mom, and my mom was with her husband who was having cataract surgery. And I'm like, okay, please find someone to take him home, come over here so that you could stay with my older son and I could take the baby to the doctor. So she comes over, I hand him to her, I go call the pediatrician, and the pediatrician's office says that he didn't have any availability till 3 o'clock that afternoon. Said he's been screaming since 4 o'clock in the morning, I need to see somebody. He's not eating, he's not sleeping, I don't know what's wrong with him. So the receptionist says, okay, then take him to the emergency room. So I'm like, okay, told my mom, let's go. All of us hop in the car. My 20-month-old son, David, my mom, Lucas, that's 7 weeks old, and me. And as we get in the car and start driving, what do babies do in the car? He falls straight asleep.
Straight to sleep.
Stops screaming, stops crying, seems totally fine.
Right.
Like, okay, great. Here you go, overreactive mom going to the emergency room.
Right.
So get there, pull in, go to the receptionist, tell her the symptoms. And she does take me to the back room right away. At this point, again, he's sleeping. Seems to me like he's sleeping, not crying, not doing anything. All his vital signs were okay. The nurse takes me immediately to the back room, and the pediatrician comes, asks me questions again, tell him everything that's going on. And then he tells me to lay him down flat on the bed, tummy side up, and he walks away. And I'm like, okay, probably going to tell me to give him Benadryl and go home. But he stops just shy of the door. He stands right at the doorway, about 10 feet away, crosses his arms, and he is just staring at my son on that bed, like laser focused. And everybody in that room is quiet. I'm like, this is weird, and I'm there looking at him, seeing if I see anything. I don't see anything. Then he walks towards the bed, and he goes straight to his head, right behind his left ear. And he asks me, did you feel this? I said no. He grabs my fingers, he makes me touch it, like, you feel that bulge? I said, yeah. He says, that's fluid that's leaking from his brain. And I'm like, okay.
Oh my God.
I'm like, what does that mean? And he says it could be spinal cerebral fluid, or it can be blood. The brain hates blood. We need to go do CT scan right now to see what's going on. And as soon as he says that, about 10 people rush into that room, and they start placing the probes on him, on his head. They raise up those rails to the bed, and they start running down that hallway. And as we're running down the hallway, his right arm starts twitching. And the nurses bolt. I mean, they bolt, and I look up at the nurse. I'm like, is this normal? She's like, no. And then I remember, because I have seizures, left side of the brain, right arm twitching, he's having a seizure. First thing that comes to my mind is, oh my God, I gave it to him, right? It's genetic. Say a little prayer right there. I'm like, Lord, please spare my son from having to live with this like I did. Gets to the CT room. Doctors tell me to go wait outside. And I'm in shock, right? My mom is there with my 20-month-old son bouncing off the walls, texting my husband, like, I'm at the hospital, pray, I don't know what's going on. Doctors call me back with the results and tell me, Miss Bruno, this is very serious.
Join us next week as we sit down with Rachel to find out how this story ends. And as always, everyone, stay encouraged, stay inspired, and stay uplifted. Trust the process and know that your hard work will not be in vain. See you next time.